We have the pleasure of speaking with Father Paul Kramer. How are you doing over there, Father Kramer, in Ireland?
I'm doing well. Ireland and the rest of Europe is not doing too well.
No, it's kind of in free fall, and it's pretty dark down there where it's falling. I'm not optimistic. Are you?
Not at all. We're in a year now that I could compare to 1939 in the last century.
Yeah.
We're on the verge of a world war.
I cannot recall any historical preference for a reversal of the evil satanic decay that has enveloped most of the developed world. So I agree. How could this be ending up in any other configuration other than a war?
I've mentioned it in the past. There was, in the early 19th century, a Jew who converted to the Catholic faith. His name was Zachary. There was a priest who edited the texts of the prophetic messages that he received from God. That was the Father Faticelli, who edited and published the book. The remarkable revelation is about the world war that will take place. That's described prophetically in that book. The Eastern power, of course, he gives you the dimensions. He describes the dimensions of this empire of the North. It's the dimensions of Russia and China, and they will go to war with North America. They will defeat North America in the war. That's all foretold, I think, in the year 1807. More recently, there's a Catholic saint by the name of Saint Luigi Orione, who prophesied that millions from North America will flee to South America. Millions will come into Argentina, fleeing a destructive war in North America. North America will be devastated by war.
This is all from Zachary?
No, this is from Saint Luigi Orione. There's two different.
Oh, I got you. All right. Got it. Pointing to the same conclusion. All right.
Yes. One is of the 20th century and the other is of the early 19th century, saying the same thing. And then there was the revelation made to Blessed Elena Aiello, 20th century. She was a nun. She had the stigmata of Christ, visible stigmata of Christ on her body. She received the revelation about Russia waging war on America with secret weapons, and that Russia would overrun all of Europe. So Russia will overrun all of Europe.
And keep right on going.
Yes. And then there was the one I mentioned in one of my recent programs with you, and that was Mother Aimee of Malestroit, who foretold the Russian invasion of Europe. And she said the occupation of Europe will last less than 1 year, but it will be a brutal occupation of Europe.
So what she's saying is that they're going to roll through Europe, vacuum up all the undesirables, and then eventually, within a year or so, go back home and leave Europe to its own general devices. Is that what we're hearing?
That's going to be part of a greater war. It's going to be much more chaotic than that.
I'm sure. But there is going to be a purge. I don't know how much more patience, diplomatically speaking, Putin and Russia can manifest in terms of the way they are being lied to. You got to remember that North Korea is in there helping them now. They're getting aid from China. They're getting a lot of help because this has been a very difficult war. Coming up in February, it'll be 4 years Russia has been fighting to take control of the Donbass, which voted 97% to join Russia. All the people wanted out of Ukraine, and they voted to join Russia. Russia proclaimed Donbass is now part of Russia. And in February, it'll be 4 years Russia has been trying to eject the Ukrainian army, which still holds approximately 10% of Donbass. So this has been a very bloody and difficult war. The Russians have lost probably 150,000 dead. We know the Ukrainians have lost over 1 million. Russia, they are building the Oreshnik missile now. Awesome weapon. It's a nuclear weapon is what it basically is. It uses kinetic warheads, and they come down at hypersonic velocity, do tremendous damage. So they've gone serial production about a year ago with the Oreshnik. They have this new one, the Burevestnik, I think it's called, which is a cruise missile propelled by a nuclear engine. In other words, it can fly indefinitely all around the world like a loitering munition and be set on a target any time that the controllers want it to hit a target. If you follow that, it's pretty scary. This is like having submarines in the ocean ready to launch at any time, but this is something flying around in the air, ready to launch down on a target at any time. So it's pretty crazy, the technology that's out there, and we don't know all of it. That'll be interesting if Russia is finally provoked into actually invading Europe.
Insane agenda that goes back decades. We go back to the George W. Bush administration, the Project for the New American Century.
Yeah.
The documents that they put out, administration figures, to put it mildly, cabinet ministers of the Bush administration, outlining their plan to partition Russia, to divide up Russia and basically create a few small countries out of puppet regimes, what formerly would have been Russia. They basically want to get rid of the Russian Federation that exists today and replace it with a few small puppet states that NATO could control so that the Western powers under their banking system can govern all that territory. That's what they're trying to do.
Good luck. Not going to happen.
What most people seem to have forgotten was that the revolution in Russia in 1917 was something imported from the West. And it was particularly a group of revolutionaries who have a common ethnicity. In January of 1917, Trotsky traveled from New York to Russia. And he didn't travel alone. He had his gang of Jewish revolutionaries. They had gold from the Jewish bankers in New York. And we know what they did in Russia. And they set up an almost completely Jewish-dominated communist government in Russia and inaugurated what they eventually called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
You know what's really incredible about that, beside the obvious, is that even then, and this is 1917, over 100 years ago, the Jews did this with so few people in total on the planet. They still only have about 17 million who identify as being Jewish. And not all Jews are rabid Zionists. We know that too. The point is, look what they did over 100 years ago with even less of a population base on the planet. Very important story you're telling. The Bolshevik Revolution.
In the message of Our Lady of Fatima, she spoke about the errors of Russia. As Pope Pius XI pointed out, that Russia, to use his own expression, Russia has sinned against than has sinned. The errors of Russia, of course, were imported into Russia from New York and London. Karl Marx, of course, lived in London. The Jewish revolutionaries from New York traveled to Russia to import the communist revolution into Russia. That's where it came from. Look at who owns and operates the Trump administration.
Yes, sir.
And we see it's the same group.
Same group. Absolutely. And they're tragically more powerful now than perhaps ever. Trump is supporting genocide, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, and financially. We're paying for the massacre of Gaza. This is U.S. money. Israel is attacking 6 or 7 other countries right now, and we're paying for that too.
Not only that, Trump is instituting in the United States a dictatorship. Most Americans, to use the Jewish expression, Gentiles are what they call cattle, goyim. Unfortunately, most Americans have been brainwashed by the Jewish-dominated media, and they think like a goyim.
You see it over there, don't you? Yeah.
This is in Catholic prophecy for a long time. They're going to take all of our rights away. They're going to reduce us to slavery in our own countries. We're going to be enslaved by this financial system, which is being introduced with the digital currency. That's all in the works. The Trump administration isn't doing anything to stop that. What they're doing is to take away all of our constitutional rights. The reason why the Trump administration is going after illegal immigrants, this is the first stage of nullifying the Constitution. They're going after them because they are the most vulnerable, the ones who have the least constitutional protection. They are arrested, put into camps, just like what the KGB did in 1937 and 1938 in the Soviet Union. 1/4 of the population of Leningrad was sent to the Gulag, processed exactly the way the Trump administration is rounding up people today. It only begins with these immigrants. Trump has already spoken about going after others, especially people who are against his administration.
Not only that, but they're throwing the term anti-Semitism around all over the place now. Tucker Carlson, world-famous commentator, reporter, is now being attacked seriously. Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes. I don't think this is spontaneous, any of it.
It is very meticulously, very systematically, very methodically. They're setting up, creating a crisis so that they will have a seemingly justifiable excuse to institute martial law.
That's
because
right. That's right.
Once they institute martial law, it will not be only illegal immigrants who have no rights. It will be
nobody will
everyone.
have rights.
Nobody will have rights. You will have the Department of Homeland Security. What ICE is doing to the illegal immigrants, also to the legal immigrants, and even to some U.S. citizens, this is going to be done to everyone. We're going to find the country under a total communist dictatorship.
You see it clearly. Remarkable.
With the changes they're making in the banking system, with the digital currency, we're going to have a social credit system like communist China in the United States. You're going to have a criminal justice system or a criminal injustice system like Stalin's Soviet Union in the United States. This is where things are headed.
It's rather appalling to think that Trump is part and parcel of the international Zionist, Satanist cabal that is running most of the Western world and influencing damn near all the rest of it. Look what they've done in Argentina. They've got Milei in there, whose last name is the same last name that Benjamin Netanyahu was born with, Milakovsky. And if you don't think there's a connection there, there may be actually a blood relation connection between Milakovsky, Milei in Argentina, and Netanyahu in Israel. Trump had no problem dropping $20 billion more into Argentina this time. Where's this money coming from to help Milei get reelected?
I have quoted the Jewish authors in my own books where they boast that they were the ones who were in charge of this communist revolution in Russia. Winston Churchill spoke of the regime in Moscow in his day, which was the Soviet Union, being run by a gang of what he called atheistical Jews. But if you mention that now, you're branded as an anti-Semite. That's called hate speech.
Instantly. The good news is 60 to 65% of Americans now are very much anti-Israel. They've seen what's happened in Gaza. They've seen the control over this country. They understand that all the media outlets here, corporations, entertainment, the major professions, are all dominated by Jewish Americans, not all of whom are bad, evil people. We don't just get that on the books one more time. Point is, when the bell rings, probably 90% of all Jews will answer it for their people, their philosophy, and their idea of an organized religion. And Goy, they're the enemy, and they're to be used and abused and discarded any way that suits their purpose.
It's in their own writings. They admit it.
Oh, it's all in black and white, you bet. Read the protocols. It's all there.
The Talmud especially. They instituted communism for the purpose of subjugating the world to their own rule.
I just don't know how we have a chance, Father Kramer, without access to the so-called mainstream media. We're doing a pretty good job on the Internet. So-called alt news, the alternative media, which of course is largely now firmly controlled by the same people who run the other side of the street. That's hard for people to really absorb, and I understand that.
What is, I think, not to be forgotten is that Russia is the country that has been chosen by God to eventually defeat these disorders which were imported into Russia by the international Jewish community in 1917. It is Russia who is going to lead the way. The conversion of Russia that will take place is going to lead to the conversion of Europe back to its traditional faith. Eventually, the conversion of England and North America, and the conversion of the Jews. The Jews will enter the church. The problem that we have between Jews and Arabs will go away, because when both Jews and Arabs embrace the faith of Jesus Christ, they will live together in peace. Before then, nothing will work.
International Zionism is a blight on the planet.
Yes. The Samson option. It's very clear what they would do.
Yep.
The only solution is, I have to say this, it is the message of Our Lady of Fatima, which is about conversion. God is allowing these disorders to take place because the human race wants to follow its own devices and not the law of God. As long as people stray away from the law of God, they separate themselves from the protection of divine grace, and God leads them to their own devices, and that's why the world is in the pitiable situation it's in now. There is a remedy. There has to be a spiritual, moral conversion. There has to be a return to faith in Jesus Christ. We have to become a Christian nation again. We have to become a Christian civilization again, rather than what's taking place now. For example, I just read today about what happened late last month in the Diocese of Münster in Germany. There was what they call the queer mass. The queer mass, get that? The queer mass.
Yeah, okay.
This is a ministry of the Diocese of Münster, and they call it the queer community, the so-called queer community. And this is a diocesan organization. This is under the so-called Catholic Diocese of Münster. The queer community organized what they call the queer mass.
That's incredible to even hear. I didn't know this. Leo the 14th looked the other way.
Could you imagine this happening in the time of Pope Pius X, Pope Pius XI, or Pope Pius XII? Impossible.
Nothing in modern Catholic history would tolerate any of this. Here's a little note. Pope Leo has now instructed Catholics not to refer to Mary, the Virgin Mary, as having helped her son Jesus save the world from damnation amid the spread of an exaggerated worship of the Madonna, often on social media, that has emboldened claims of apparitions, weeping statues, and self-styled prophets. So Leo has stepped up now and instructed all Catholics not to refer to Mary as having helped Jesus save the world from damnation. This is a decree from the Vatican's Doctrinal Office, approved by the Pontiff. He says Jesus alone saved humanity from hellfire, and therefore Catholics must not call Mary the Co-Redemptrix. Is this a much ado about nothing story? It's got some ink. I'm kind of interested.
This is spitting in the face of Pope Pius XI and Pope Pius X. They were the ones who explained theologically what is the co-redemption. Christ is the one and only Redeemer. But as Cardinal Burke has recently pointed out in a talk that he gave, this idea of co-redemption, this is something scriptural. It is the participation in the mystery of redemption. As Christians, we are called to participate in Christ's redemption. Christ calls upon the members of his church to cooperate with him in the work of redemption. It is through his merits, it is through Christ's merits that we are given the grace to participate in his work of redemption. It is his merits that bring about the redemption, his alone. It is through the merits of his redemption that we are given the grace to participate in the work of redemption. And that is preeminently fulfilled by his mother, Mary, who more preeminently than any other person cooperated so totally in the work of his redemption that she merited to be called the Co-Redemptrix. This is settled Catholic doctrine. What Leo XIV is doing is rejecting Catholic doctrine. He's rejecting Catholic teaching. And he's following a false doctrine of a new religion, of the synodal church, the synodalist religion, which is different and opposed to the Catholic religion, to the Catholic faith. That is what we see taking place from this organization in Rome, which calls itself the Synodal Church.
The prefect of the Vatican's Doctrinal office wrote in a preface to the decree that it was a response to questions in recent years about devotion to Mary and to clarify what is acceptable to the Church. And who is the prefect of the Vatican's Doctrinal office? Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez. He didn't go away. He's still right there.
Yes, the same Tucho Fernandez who,
That's it,
under Bergoglio, came out with this document saying that any Marian apparition that threatens divine punishment on the world is false.
Can you imagine the intrigue that's going on at all levels in the Vatican?
How many threats of divine punishment do we read in the Old Testament? The Old Testament is filled with God threatening punishment upon the people if they stray away from obedience to God. Deuteronomy chapter 28, Leviticus chapter 26.
These times are astonishing. I've never seen anything like it. Here's a headline for you. Trump admits he doesn't care about affordability as the economy dives. As inflation rises and layoffs surge and SNAP benefits, that's food stamps, stop, President Trump told Americans point blank that he does not want to hear about their affordability issues. Talk about the cost of Thanksgiving, he said, and the cost of living through Thanksgiving. Our energy costs are way down. Our groceries are way down. Everything is way down. And the press doesn't report it, said Trump. Talk about missing the picture. Jobs are evaporating. People don't have any money. 40-plus million Americans got no food stamps. Court ordered Trump to make sure the Department of Agriculture paid for the SNAP food stamps this month. Trump refused. He sent his attorneys to appeal the judge's ruling. He didn't want people to have food stamps. He wants this government shutdown to result in what may be the beginnings of a civil war.
This is exactly the agenda of the communists, which is to create a revolutionary situation. It was Lenin who said, the worse, the better. That group that was in charge of the communist revolution wanted to make the economic plight of the people desperate, to get them into a revolutionary frenzy, to get them into a chaotic, rebellious mood.
Listen to this. This is the man that America elected. He says,
people cannot afford to buy houses anymore. Young people graduate from college, they're ready to enter the workforce.
It's not. There isn't any.
If they're lucky enough to find a job, the job they find is not enough to support themselves. They still have to live with their parents.
The average age of a home buyer in America now is 40. Home ownership is unless you're from a wealthy family or are extremely brilliant and do something remarkable, you're not. It's not going to happen.
And private equity is buying up all the houses, and people.
BlackRock, you bet.
It's not going to be possible for people to buy houses anymore. This is done by design. They're taking over all of the property.
Yes. What a tragedy.
It is a monopolistic system that is being imposed. They are reforming the financial system so that we're going to have a digital currency. We're going to have a social credit system. We're going to have a monopolistic ownership, elite owning all the property. In one word, this is communism.
Everybody will be renting at best. Yuri Bezmenov, former KGB agent who defected and came over to the U.S., has a long list of techniques that communism and communists use. Bezmenov. Look for him. Bezmenov. Thank you, Father Kramer. Very insightful, very helpful. It's a light in the dark that you always shine. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Right now.